Here's the problem. Not a single patient here, since this thing began, has been discharged or successfully extubated.
You see the black body bags? You say, what's in there? It's Elmhurst Hospital? Must be supplies. It's not supplies, it's people.
Also from the beginning of the crisis, ventilators were described as essential life-saving equipment, initially in short supply.
You picked the 26,000 people who are going to die because you only sent 400 ventilators.
Erin was brought from Florida by a service funded by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. She spent almost a month at Elmhurst. What she saw there compelled her to become a reporter and whistleblower alongside her already extensive nursing duties. She made recordings, posted warnings on social media, and spoke through proxies about the nightmare conditions she witnessed. Erin was raised in Wisconsin and enlisted in the Army when she was 17, just before 9/11. She deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. Part of her duties involved overseeing aid disbursement and improvements to hospital facilities. While in country, she received the Army Commendation Medal for meritorious service and was wounded in combat. Erin eventually retired as a sergeant and became a civilian nurse in 2012. A mutual friend who was helping her make hidden camera recordings introduced us to Erin. After working a long shift at the hospital, she agreed to do an impromptu interview in her room at the Marriott Marquis.
They were being told, the public has been told to self-quarantine, right? Stay home. That's a problem because these people could be getting early treatment.
There's clinical trials emerging that appears to show that it decreases severity early in the game, before you end up hospitalized, before you end up on a ventilator.
And they're not, because they were told to stay home. So now they're getting really sick, and they come in on an emergency status. They waited too long. And if they didn't wait too long, they're easily treatable.
And easily treatable, you feel, with some of these treatments,
yeah,
like
100%.
Zinc and hydroxychloroquine, and
it's working. I mean, it's been proven to work. There's a doctor, I think, in Texas that's using that protocol and a shot in the butt, of antibiotic shot. I don't know exactly which one she was using, and she's successfully treating. And she was saying that the pharmacist now is calling her every time that she prescribes, the hydroxychloroquine, and asking what the diagnosis was of the patients in order to give it to them. I'm like, that's a doctor-patient relationship. So the pharmacist, I guess, was told to do this. And, in New York, the governor said, pretty much put a ban on it. So why? What made him, a medical professional now to make these decisions and intrude on the doctor-patient relationship? I think I know. I've seen it. They want a vent. He wants to be right. They requested all these vents. They want to use them.
And I think the other thing most of our listeners recognize, a successful clinical trial will reduce mortality, say it's in the intensive care unit, by 20%. But that's a number needed to treat a 5 or 10 or 15 or 20. It's not going to cure the disease.
Right.
And so I think people need to be prepared. There may be successful trials, but it's not going to be a dramatic reduction in mortality. That would be surprising.
It would surprise me greatly. It really would. It really would.
So what happens? People come in like this 37-year-old, and what was he complaining of, or what was going on?
Respiratory distress. He didn't have COVID either. He did not have COVID.
And how do we know that?
I took care of him. I have the same type of results from his chart as I do my other patient.
It was like the day before intubation, he was fine on the rebreather.
And then they intubated, and then he got a pneumo, and then they put in a PEP tube, and then it's been shipped.
And now he's 37 years old and dead.
Because that's what I'm seeing, like all these negative tests, and they're putting them on these vents. Hopeful that they'll get it. They're being put on these COVID floor. It's murder. It straight up is. It is setting these people up for failure based on money.
But Medicaid is who pays out, or who's paying this bonus of $29,000?
I believe it's Medicaid, Medicare. It's government money. But I don't know exactly where it's coming from, but I know that it is. But I know the orders are coming from the above, someone above, and everybody says that it's someone higher up. I'm like, good, call them. Like during that DNR when they're telling us, or the full code when they're telling us not to, do CPR. I'm like, all right, call your higher ups then. Let's talk about. And they wouldn't, because they're all scared. Everybody's scared. And everybody's scared to stick up for themselves. And I've called a lot of doctors unethical to their face, and they deserve it.
I am a nurse. I'm an advocate for my patients. And
to the flip side of it, but I totally agree.
But no. Just wait.
If there's a DNR.
You were laughing and you thought it was funny. You were like smirking. You're being really rude to all of us. And I thought that was really.
I'm not being rude in that.
It was really, yeah, you are. It was very disrespectful. And I don't think that you're going to be a very good doctor.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope you learned something from this.
Was this the dentist, or was this, or these are residents you're talking to?
This one was a fellow. She was a CCU fellow. Cardiac. She's a cardiac fellow.
What killed him? Did the vent kill him?
Yeah. Oh, yes. They're so sedated. He had probably 8 or 9 drips. It's all sedation. It's all sedation and paralytics. So you are asleep. It is essentially like you're under, you're in surgery, when they put you under like that for a good month straight. There's no way you can recover from something like that. You're brain dead if you do.
So can you list some of the drugs that they're put on the drips?
Yeah, there's propofol, fentanyl, Nimbex, Versed. Gosh, hang on, I have a list. I think a list from, this is one of my patients was on this, just one patient. So Nimbex, 100 milligrams, Precedex, 400 milligrams, fentanyl, 2,500 micrograms, heparin, 25,000 units, Versed, 50 milligrams, Levophed, 16,000, Neo, 50 milligrams, propofol, 10 milligrams, vasopressin, 100 units. This is one person, and all these drips are running at the same time into them.
So, in the case of this 37-year-old, he comes in complaining of some respiratory distress. Did he have low blood oxygen?
Totally healthy guy, and he was satting that's the oxygen saturations, and 88, 89.
So a little low.
I mean, yeah, but people do that. You and I probably do that, where we're not monitoring our oxygen, all day long.
But he felt shortness of breath, so he came in.
Yes.
And what was the next step? What would have happened next?
He went to a step-down unit, among other.
What does that mean? Sorry.
It's just a unit where people aren't quite on the vent yet, and I say on the vent yet because I should call it a step-up unit to the vent. But
so was he? What's the phrase you used? COVID
rule out.
COVID rule out.
So that's how they admit everyone to the floor that doesn't have a positive COVID immediately.
Okay, so he's put in the step-down unit, which is a euphemism for step-up unit.
Yeah.
And what happens to him there? What's going on there?
Oxygen. I wasn't in this unit. My friend was.
So just normal oxygen, nasal?
No, they'll do a high pressure.
So what does that mean exactly? What does it look like?
Pretty much like a forced. It almost looks like a big thick nasal cannula, and you put it in your nose, and it forces the pressure in. It can almost be it's still causing your lungs to expand, right? But what they really need to be doing is the non-rebreather mask, but they just skip it usually. They go right to the high pressure, so their lungs are already,
So, and tell us what a non-rebreather mask is.
So that's just, there's a bag that is on the end of these masks. It's not forcing air down your lungs.
Okay.
It's more natural.
Okay.
And you can put 100% oxygen. That's what people need.
Okay, so, and that really is not the protocol. It's not the protocol to start people on that.
I mean, it should be, but it's not how they're doing it now.
I mean, in your prior experience dealing with people with low saturation, would that be what you would do?
Oh, yeah. That's what we were doing, in my hometown.
And were you having better outcomes there?
Yeah, we didn't have this because we treated them properly,
What would you say the kind of the case fatality rate was?
None. 0. Yeah, by me, 0.
And what is the likelihood of coming out of the hospital you're in?
I'll tell you that the unit that I've been on, the only person that survived, ironically, is a guy who pulled his own tube out.
So he woke up enough to be able to do that?
Yeah. He wanted it out. He should have never been on in the first place. That's a whole other story.
So let's just keep going with this 37-year-old. So he's on the step-down unit, and he's being given semi-pressurized oxygen. It's not a rebreather mask. And then what happens to him?
They'll start treating them with medications, that will...
And are they checking his saturation at this all the time? Does he have...
Yeah, he's on a continuous pulse ox, but, the minute that he desats, they'll see, oh, no, he's at 87 now. Or, oh, look at this. Oh, he's going to need more help. And then they go tell them that they need more help, even if they don't. It's ultimately what it comes down to is, people being just lazy and wanting to treat. They just want to treat.
Is there any incentive to you're saying that the incentive for the residents is kind of experimental almost.
They're order followers.
And
they want to please. That's what they're doing. They want to please. And the protocol of that hospital is to treat.
To treat invasively according to this protocol. And do we know where this protocol originates? I mean, because obviously the governor was talking about getting vents. Everyone was talking about getting vents. So this seems like this comes from very high up.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to tell somebody, the entire world essentially, especially the entire United States, when they're like, we need the vents, if you tell people something enough, they're going to start believing it. So that's exactly what happened.
Tell me why Cuomo immediately thought 2 months ago that they'd need 30,000 beds. How do you just come up with a number?
Cuomo's an idiot too.
Well, Medicaid's paying them more money for people.
29,000 a vet.
So our 37-year-old, what happens to him next? So they say, okay, it looks like he's at 87, he needs more, and so is that the point at which they would intubate him?
Yeah, that's when he that's when he stepped up. So he stepped up to the ICU.
He steps up to the ICU.
For more care, right? They start off with a little bit of muscle relaxer, and he's woozy. You have to remember there's no family with these patients, so they're alone and in hospital by themselves during a pandemic that they're terrified of already. That's likely what brought him in the first place. He's totally healthy otherwise. And then you have doctors. They think they're doctors, but they're resident. Technically, they're doctors with absolutely zero experience. I've had to teach residents several nursing skills. Telling them that they have a choice, they could likely die from this, or they can be saved by, getting a tube, and that will help them breathe. They don't call it ventilator. We can give you a little help breathing, and that's it. Then they get the sedation, and they go to sleep, and that's it. They don't wake up. He's in a body bag.
You see the black body bags? You say, what's in there? It's Elmhurst Hospital? Must be supplies. It's not supplies, it's people.
Also, from the beginning of the crisis, ventilators were described as essential life-saving equipment, initially in short supply.
You picked the 26,000 people who are going to die because you only sent 400 ventilators. I want to talk about something else that nobody knows. Why do I know what Tony Fauci thinks? I've known him a lot of my life, but I've never known him the way I know you through this pandemic. I have spoken to you almost without exception every day. And you have been calling me out of personal concern to make sure that I'm okay, that my wife was okay, that my son was okay. 11 o'clock at night, later, waiting for my show to end, Saturday, Sunday morning, the rare time you have with your family. Why?
Well, first of all, because you're a friend. I mean, we have a professional relationship, but you're a friend. I've known you since, I hate to say it, since you were almost a kid.
And I think the other thing most of our listeners recognize, a successful clinical trial will reduce mortality, say it's in the intensive care unit, by 20%. But that's a number needed to treat a 5 or 10 or 15 or 20. It's not going to cure the disease.
Right.
And so I think people need to be prepared. There may be successful trials, but it's not going to be a dramatic reduction in mortality. That would be surprising.
It would surprise me greatly. It really would. It really would.
And the only reason I'm sharing it on TV instead of saying it to you as I have many times in person, I want people to know who they're getting in Tony Fauci.
Here's the problem. Not a single patient here, since this thing began, has been discharged or successfully extubated.